Hello, Year 3, and I hope you're having a great RE day and learning lots about Judaism. I'm here to share with you a story which is all about a prophet named Elijah. The text is attached to the home learning document if you want to keep it for your reference. I suggest you just follow it on screen when I'm going to be reading it and take time to listen. Maybe read along if you feel like you want to. I'll be stopping and going through a few keywords as we go. Let me just switch my camera. Okay. Elijah's wisdom. Many years ago, there were prophets who walked the earth. So a prophet is someone, it's like a type of teacher, and they often look into the future. The prophets were messengers of God, and their job was to make the world more just and peaceful. Just is another word for fair. The prophets were special. God spoke to them directly, and they could hear and understand what the divine voice said. God asked them to tell the people what they were supposed to do. Go and speak to the people, God said. Tell them that the world that I have created for them is not yet complete. I have given human beings everything they need to be my partners in making the world a just and peaceful place to live in. But now it is up to them. They must work together to bring that ideal world into being. The prophets journey far and wide, trying to tell people what it was that God wanted. But no one listened to them. It was not easy to be a prophet, no matter what stories they told, no matter how loudly they spoke, no matter how important their message was. No one seemed to care. Who cares about fighting injustice, one man said. I've got enough to do keeping my family safe. Why should I feed that hungry beggar? Hasn't he got any friends and family of his own? I can only just afford to feed my own children, a woman muttered to her friend. We're tired of being told what to do, said another person. Why can't we just get on with our own lives? In the end, God gave up and stopped talking to the prophets and asking them to pass message on to the people. Most of the prophets who had heard God's voice died, and there was no one left who listened to God or understood God's vision for the world. Now, when the people saw that there were no more prophets to guide them, they said, now, how will we know how to create a just and peaceful world? But there was no one to answer them. All they could do was read the words the prophets had written down and try and learn what God wanted from them. There was one prophet, however, who had not died. No one knew he was still alive because he had run away in despair. His name was Elijah, and he was the most passionate prophet of them all. When the people refused to listen to him, he was so sad that he could not bear to stay in the towns and cities any longer. He went off into the desert by himself. Please God, said Elijah, I don't want to live on this earth anymore. No one knows who you are, and no one cares any longer or does anything to make a world a better place. Please, let me die. But God knew that Elijah was special. Instead of letting him die, God sent a chariot of fire to take him up to heaven, where he lives to this day. However, this did not mean that Elijah's duties had come to an end. Elijah, said God, you are the only one who understands how to make the world just and peaceful. You must visit Earth every day and reward those who are trying to make the world better. Your visits need to be a secret. No one must know who you are. That way you can find out who is good and truly deserves to be rewarded. So, since that time, Elijah has spent each day dressed as either a beggar or an old woman. He comes down to earth and seeks out who are in need of help. Sometimes he comes to reward those who, even though they are poor, are willing to share what little they have with others. Sometimes he comes to punish those who are behaving unjustly. Sometimes he comes to deliver a message. You never know when he might appear, but if you see a beggar solve a problem which seemed to be impossible, and then vanish, you know that Elijah's been to visit. Or if an old woman gives you wise advice. Listen to her carefully. She might be Elijah in disguise. One day, a famous rabbi named Joshua prayed that he might meet Elijah. Elijah, Rabbi Joshua prayed, I don't understand why bad people are sometimes rewarded while good people are punished. How do you know who is actually making the world better and who is making it worse? Please come and teach me your wisdom. I beg you. Elijah knew that Rabbi Joshua truly wanted to become wise, and his heart went out for him. He decided he would help, so he paid a visit to Rabbi Joshua. You may follow me on my visits around the earth, Elijah told him. That way you will find the answer to your question, but there is one condition. You must not ask any questions or challenge anything I do or say. The moment you do, I'll return to heaven and you'll be on your own again. Rabbi Joshua agreed to this at once. So Rabbi Joshua and Elijah the prophet set off together. They were both dressed in rags so that no one would guess who they really were. Soon they arrived at the home of an old woman who lived in a tiny one-roomed hut. Come in, strangers, said the woman. You look tired from your journey. Let me get you something to drink. She went into a little lean-to shed next to the hut and took some milk from her old cow. I'm sorry I don't have anything else to drink, but please take what milk I have, and I will make you some dinner. Then I will hope you will stay the night in my humble home. Rabbi Joshua and Elijah accepted her offer of hospitality and settled down for the night. Rabbi Joshua was certain that the next morning Elijah would reward the woman for her kindness. She had so little, yet she was willing to share it all. What a perfect example this was of how to be good and make the world better. In the morning, Elijah said a prayer over the woman's cow. Rabbi Joshua watched in horror as the cow lay down, rested her head on the straw, and died. What have you done? Cried Joshua. That was her only cow, and now she will have no milk to drink. What kind of reward is that? Elijah simply turned to him and said, I will only remind you once of what you promised. You said you would not question my actions or challenge me in any way. Rabbi Joshua closed his mouth. He picked up his pack and followed Elijah in silence. The next house they came to belonged to a rich man. It had many bedrooms and a kitchen filled with food. What do you want? The rich man said crossly. Why are you bothering me? We are wayfarers hoping for some food and a place to spend the night, Rabbi Joshua began to say. The rich man glared at them. You are far too dirty to come into my home, he said. And if I were to give you food, then pretty soon I'd have to share it with every poor person that happened to stop by. Rabbi Joshua begged him. It's getting dark, he said, and we have nowhere else to go. The rich man looked them up and down. Well, because I am so generous, I'll let you two sleep over by that broken wall in the stable, he grunted, but you must leave at the first sign of dawn. As the two men settled into the straw to sleep, Rabbi Joshua was sure that in the morning Elijah would punish the man for his unkindness and lack of hospitality. So he was very surprised when he woke up to find Elijah standing in front of the broken wall, praying that it repair itself. As Rabbi Joshua watched, the stones stacked themselves on top of each other until the broken wall was mended. He opened his mouth to say something, then shut it quickly again. A swift glance at Elijah's face reminded him of his promise not to ask questions, so he simply shook his head in bewilderment. So bewilderment is when it's quite confusing. It's something which you can't imagine happening. The two men journeyed on. Rabbi Joshua was more confused than ever by his companion's actions. They walked all day until they arrived in a city where they stopped for evening prayers at a beautiful synagogue. Inside the building stood candlesticks of solid gold and finely stitched tapestries hung on the walls. Elijah and Rabbi Joshua overheard people in the congregation discussing what they would be eating when they got home after the prayers were over. The meals they described sounded delicious. Fresh fruit, vegetables, and sumptuous meals. Rabbi Joshua and Elijah felt their mouths begin to water. They were sure someone would invite them to join their evening meal, but one by one, each person left the synagogue without looking back. Darkness fell. The synagogue was empty, and only the warden, who had to lock the doors for the night, remained. He saw Elijah and Joshua standing on their own in the gathering gloom and reluctantly offered them some bread. "If you've got nowhere else to go," the man said grudgingly, "you can sleep on the floor in here for the night. I'll be back to open up in the morning." And with that, Joshua and Elijah were left alone for the night. The next morning, Rabbi Joshua was once again puzzled by Elijah's actions. Instead of praying that the people of this beautiful synagogue be punished for not sharing their wealth with strangers, Elijah said, "May each member of this synagogue become a leader of the community." Rabbi Joshua did not understand Elijah's actions, but by now he knew not to question him. After another day's travel, the two men arrived at a little wooden synagogue, huddled among the market stalls of a small town. This synagogue was different from the one in the city in every possible way. The building was humble, with a low roof and only one room, and no furniture at all. But all the people here were kind and welcoming. As soon as Elijah and Rabbi Joshua entered, someone approached them and said, "You must be weary from your travels. Do you need a place for supper and to rest? You are most welcome at any one of our homes. We do not have much, but we will gladly share what we do have." Elijah and Rabbi Joshua accepted gladly. Following a simple but generous dinner, they were each given a soft bed to sleep in. "This time," thought Rabbi Joshua, "I am sure that Elijah will reward the entire community." Not only did one family offer us hospitality, but it was clear that any of the others would have gladly done the same. Once again, when morning arrived, Rabbi Joshua listened to Elijah's prayer, but was astounded by what he heard. "For this town, dear God," said Elijah, "I ask that you make only one of them a leader." Rabbi Joshua could not hold back any longer. "How can you say such a prayer?" he exclaimed. "This is a town of kind people. Why should only one of them be rewarded with leadership? In the other town, where we were treated so poorly, you rewarded them all." And now that Rabbi Joshua had started to question and complain, he found he could not stop. "Nothing you prayed for is fair at all. Explain to me why you punished that old woman by killing her cow, while you rewarded that horrid rich man by fixing his wall. It's all wrong." Elijah listened silently to Rabbi Joshua's outburst before answering. "My dear Joshua," he said, "you have broken your promise to me, so now I will have to leave you on your own and return to heaven. But before I will explain my actions so that you can understand that things are not always as they appear. The old woman at the first house was meant to die on the very day we visit her. Because of her kindness to us, I prayed that God take the cow in her place. At the second house, there was treasure under the wall, which the man did not deserve because he was so ungenerous. When I asked God to repair the wall, I was making sure that he would never find the treasure beneath it. As for the two synagogues, I rewarded the good people and punished the bad ones. When I prayed for many leaders for the rich synagogue, I knew this would lead to arguments and problems, and the poor synagogue, on the other hand, will have one leader to lead them wisely and in peace. And now, suddenly, Rabbi Joshua understood how wise Elijah's prayers and actions had been. Rabbi Joshua hadn't understood who was being rewarded and who was being punished. Now that I see that justice is not so simple. The only way to make the world more just is not by judging God, but by accepting that God knows best. We must act justly ourselves and do what we know is right, leaving the rest to God. And we must trust that God will reward us for that in time. Elijah smiled. You would have been a good prophet, Rabbi Joshua. If only more people could understand what you have just said and work to make the world better in the way that we have suggested, then perhaps God would start speaking to human beings again. Then I could return to Earth and announce that the era of peace and justice has begun. Joshua, my son, keep working towards that. Get others to do the same, and perhaps I will see you once again one day. With that, Elijah vanished back up to heaven. Rabbi Joshua was left to ponder over this precious bit of wisdom and to think how he could learn from it to teach more people to make the world a better place. Let this illustration link to the story. Just going to go back. Stop sharing with me. Well, I hope year 3 you found that an interesting story and it had a lot of questions for us to think about. You might want to pause the video or just stop the video now, maybe have some silent reflection, and then maybe it's something you might want to discuss in your briefings or discuss with your family. Thank you very much for listening and have a good rest of the day.